What's going on, degenerates and fight fans? We are Fight Night. I am Proto here with my co-host JewJitsuDan, Bet Juice. We are missing our boy Kevin this week, so it's just the two of us. Dan, I know you're ready to get into this after that hellstorm of 279 last week.
Man, what a crazy card. Obviously, we taped last week's show before all the craziness happening, the switching in matches and different odds and kind of putting together last minute bets. But man, did it ever work out for us, right? I mean, we had a little bit of a sweat on that last one with Rodriguez, the split, but man, we killed it last night. I mean, last week.
Yeah, I mean, we came out on top. Basically, last week's episode was rendered useless for anyone who watched. I think they only got to keep two of the fights. Luckily, the first one of those two was that Johnny Walker play, which we gave out early on there. I put on my gold frame glasses for that one. So we hammered that play out, put a lot of money on that, 2.5 units, as you can see there, plus 165. But just look at that slate. I mean, a clean sweep. It's our first clean sweep since we started doing the KP plays. You see there, we had the Daniel Rodriguez plus Chimaev parlay. That one I prematurely counted that as a loss. I technically didn't give the okay on that bet. I wasn't really too hyped on Daniel Rodriguez in that spot. So, a little prematurely sent it to you and Kev saying, of course, this one's going to lose a 3-unit play. Luckily, the judges gave Rodriguez that nod due to his many jabs. But Leoness, you called that one out, 1 unit on him, start off the night. Elise Reed, we had that plus 155. That one we were pretty high on as well. And then Tululin by knockout. We pretty much called that one exactly how it went down. Jamie Pickett, we said, once it starts getting into a firefight, he kind of wilts under that pressure. And we certainly saw that. And you can see that final figure there. Plus 10.39 units for the Fight Night King's Purse official plays, a clean sweep. You and I both had good nights as well on top of that. So, just an all-around great event for an event that was, like I said earlier, it was like a hellstorm. So much broke loose. We had so much shuffling to do for those final 3 fights, but we came out on top.
Yeah, and as always, we were in the Discord, throwing in some bets as the night goes, and that's why there's value in just kind of chilling in there. We're all there, all just sort of chirping up what's going on, what we're seeing, calling out live plays, and I had a big spot on Diaz for sure. I had him, money line by submission. I even cut a little round 4 action there. I thought it was a great spot for him. You were on Ferguson, so we'll call that as is. But yeah, man, let's.
I bet the Ferguson decision, and then I think it was probably like a minute into the fight, I live bet Nate Diaz. I was like, this is just. I saw all I needed to see in those first few exchanges. I mean, Tony Ferguson, unfortunately, is like a shell of himself now.
It's tough. I didn't really like him at 170. I think he's going to have. Apparently, I heard this week that he's just signed a new contract, so I don't think he's going anywhere. But I didn't particularly like him at 170. Diaz still has some juice left in the tank, and I think Tony is at the point where we're seeing that decline now. Like I mentioned, I mentioned that on the Spaces, how after the Gaethje fight, he's really never been the same, and we're seeing that. So. Still one of my favorite fighters. I'll always watch his fights. I'll always root for him. But yeah, it's tough when you see one of those guys kind of start to go.
Yeah, I mean, kind of reminiscent of Cowboy Cerrone a little bit, right? I mean, 155 and 170. And funny enough, I think that was Ferguson's last win, right? It was against Cowboy about 3 or 4 years ago at this point. So
yeah,
it's tough racket. I think he said he signed like a 5-fight extension too, which I don't know. I don't want to see him live out that contract. I really don't. But, enough about last week. It's time to move on to this week. A pretty exciting fight night event. I think every single fight throughout this card, has banger potential. It's going to be pretty much a barn burner from start to finish, but we'll pick up where we always do, the first fight of the main card. We got Anthony Fluffy Hernandez taking on, of course, a Canadian, Marc-Andre Barriault, the power bar. So, this is a decent matchup. I know you and I are already on the same page with this one. We both lean the Barriault side. I'm going to let you start this one off. I'm just going to build off what you have to say.
Yeah, I mean, interesting fight for sure. You've got, Fluffy Hernandez, who could forget his legendary submission of Adolfo Vieira. I mean, that'll go down as forever as one of the biggest upsets, and certainly in recent memory. But and then again, his last fight went up against a guy who's coming in on short notice, but was managed to kind of squeeze out a decision. He won clear, 2-1 on the card. So he's riding some momentum coming into this. You got Barrio, who, the guy is a workhorse. Always in these firefights, it seems like, certainly like a kill or be killed guy, durable, and with the exception of quick knockout from Chidi Kawani, he's been pretty effective in his last few fights, and it seems like a lot of people are counting him out. I mean, when I saw him at plus money, I actually kind of got wide-eyed there, because I look at Fluffy Hernandez and it seems like he only has one way to win a fight. And watching his last fight, certainly goes for the submission. He loves that arm-in guillotine, setting it up from the turtle position. So I think it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. I just like the physicality of Barrio. I think he's a durable guy. He makes smart decisions, and he can really put on the pressure. So like in the third round, he's going to come in and try to finish you. I saw a little bit of fatigue there in the second round of Hernandez's last fight. His opponent, he was dominating a lot of the grappling exchanges, and at one point got reversed, flipped onto his back. To his credit, he came out in the third and ended up grappling for the full round and controlling it, and won clearly that one. But in that second round, you saw the fatigue, and I think against a guy like Barrio, who's probably going to be a little bit more dangerous, I think he can catch Fluffy. I think he can catch him late. Once he, if he doesn't have the kind of success that he had in his last fight in the grappling, I think on the feet, I'd actually give this to Barrio. So curious to think. I know that you like Barrio as well. But anything to add there?
No, I mean, you pretty much nailed it all. I mean, Barrio, I do agree, he has the advantage on the feet. He definitely has the power advantage. I mean, I believe like 9 of his 14 wins have been by knockout, right? And then his last time out got his first submission win as a pro. He's no slouch on the ground, right? I mean, once it hits the mats, he's kind of well-versed. He knows what he's doing. He could get out of, I think, some of those tricky situations that Hernandez could put him in. But you pretty much mentioned it, that Hernandez has one path to victory here, and it's a submission. But not only is it a submission, it's one of the least successful submissions that you could throw in MMA, which is the guillotine, right? I mean, I believe guillotines have historically somewhere around like 20% success rate. So when you're coming into a fight as the favorite and you really only have that one path for victory, it's not enough for me. And I know you mentioned it too with the Barrio going against Chidi and Kawani. Other than that fight, I mean, he's looked pretty good his last 3 or 4 fights. I mean, his fight against Dalcha Lunchambula, I thought he looked phenomenal. Looked like he really turned a corner, kind of, grew into his skill set, his physicality. Everything seemed to really come together in that fight. And then the last time out against Jordan Wright, I believe it was, he wound up getting that guillotine. And, I think that Hernandez might have trouble getting Barrio to the ground. And with those, many takedown attempts that Hernandez is going to throw out there, and you mentioned he fights at a very high pace to begin the fights, I definitely agree with you that Barrio could get a late finish in this one.
Yeah, right now that's the only bet that I've got locked in personally. I've got Barrio in for a half unit. Probably going to be adding more. I just want to see how this line is going to pan out. It seems like it's going in the fluffy direction. So if that's the case, I mean, I'll wait right before fight time to place another bet. But I'm definitely going to have some Barrio round 3 here.
Yeah, I mean, even another good bet, I think DraftKings offer these group rounds, and I think Barrio in round 3 or by decision sitting at plus 330. So I think you get very good value there, because do I see him? I mean, he got a first round finish his last time out, but he's not historically known to finish fights early. And basically the way we outline this fight, it does favor him later. So I think I like that line too.
No doubt. Well, great to see that we're on the same side. I'm sure Kev is going to come out and be like, Fluffy's going to sub him. So We'll see about that. We'll see what happens. But
hey, we can only hope that's the case, right? I mean, after the clean sweep, we're feeling ourselves a little bit.
No doubt, baby. But let's talk about this next one. Another Canadian. You want to kick us off?
Yeah, I mean, you have a chance right off the bat to go for your Canadian parlay these first 2 legs of this main card. You got Tanner Boser taking on Rodrigo Nacimento. Neither guy's fought in over a year, right? So it's going to be interesting to see how they both come back. I mean, Tanner Boser is one of those guys that he had a lot of hype surrounding him, right? Early in his UFC career, he had tons of wins coming in, not many losses. Fought Cyril Gane his second time in, obviously lost that one. And then it's kind of been exchanging wins and losses since then. I know he's coming off a win against Ovince St. Preux his last time out, second round knockout. Then you got someone in Rodrigo Nacimento. He entered the UFC around the same time as Boser, but he's been fairly inactive, right? I mean, I think he's been in the UFC for 3 years, his 4 total fights. He's coming to this one, like I said, a year layoff on his own right. Last time out, he fought Alain Baudot, right? Got the second round knockout there, but I think up to that point, he was, getting pieced up a little bit. I think, if I'm not wrong, Baudot landed like 73 of 115 strikes or something around there. He was able to find the target. And it's funny because when you're looking at this fight from basically just a statistical standpoint, just on paper, Nacimento, I think the graphic here is 9. I think he's 8-1. Tanner Boser, 20-8. Nacimento, 5-inch reach advantage, right? He's the younger fighter. He has more offensive output. He's the one that's going to be threatening takedowns. The one thing that is glaring, though, is his striking defense. He has horrible striking defense. I think he absorbs like 6.3 strikes per minute. And someone like Tanner Boser, I mean, I feel like their whole game plan is to, basically just be in your face, constantly pepper you with punches throughout the entire fight until eventually, he wins the war of attrition. He gets you either out of there late or he wins on the scorecard. So it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. Nacimento, obviously very highly credentialed grappler as well. Not necessarily a great wrestler. I don't know if he's going to be able to get this fight to the mat. I think Boser statistically has like 70% takedown defense. And when you're looking at Nacimento, I think his only takedowns landed in the UFC so far have been against Dontel Mays. So, when we're looking at numbers, adding some more context to them, we can kind of better explain this. Obviously, Boser's fought the better competition. There's no denying that. The one thing about Nacimento, though, is that he punches very hard. I mean, we saw that in his last fight. I think he obviously has the power advantage here. He has the reach advantage, as I mentioned. I think Boser definitely has a speed advantage. And like I mentioned, if it goes to the ground, Nacimento has the advantage here. That's why it's a little tough for me to get behind this one. I think this is closer to a coin flip than I think Boser's like minus 170. But if I know anything about you, I know which side you're on before you even have to say anything. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it's a good point about the line. I mean, I think I would cap Boser as more like a minus 140, minus 150 here. I think Nacimento, has some, good submission skills and, can throw a hammer, but, I think where he has problems is against guys that are, quick on their feet and quick at their hands. And, that's what we saw in that Chris Dawkins fight. And I think that's what we'll see here with Tanner Boser. He's been out for a year and change. Some of the interviews that he's been kind of giving, he's been talking about, that he knows he wants a finish. He doesn't want to get this to the judges. He's been screwed before. So I like coming in with that mentality. I think as the fight progresses, it certainly favors him. He can, his cardio is never an issue. Where Nacimento, I think if he, either go, find some success in the first and, maybe gas himself out or, again, just as the fight goes on, maybe he can't get this to the ground. Boser is going to, he has a good gas tank and he keeps moving. And, he's been in there with a lot of tough guys, a lot of good grapplers. And I think he can, if he can hold Nacimento at bay, he can, potentially finish this late or again, maybe go to a decision. It's tough. He KO'd OSP in his last fight, but OSP is an old light heavyweight that didn't want to cut weight, right? So I don't know if I give that one too much credit.
I mean, but, even so, in that fight, I mean, OSP got Boser down, right? I mean, he got him with that trip takedown against the fence, and he held him there for a decent amount of time up until obviously Boser got up and finished the fight, which is the highlight on that one. But it's kind of just a weird one for me, man.
It's going to be, Nacimento early or Boser late, no doubt. But, I'll definitely be on the Boser side. I think
naturally.
a nice little Barrio Boser parlay sounds in the works. So that's most likely where I'll be.
All right. Awesome. Let's move on to this next one. This is a line that, you just look at this, right? I mean, Joe Pyfer, minus 435 against Alan Amadovsky. Based off each of their last performances, I guess you could say that the line is correct, right? But for me, the first thing I notice is Joe Pyfer was an underdog in that Contender Series fight, right? I think he went off at like plus 120-ish, somewhere around that range. And he comes in against someone who has fights in the UFC, and he's almost a 5-1 favorite. So, I mean, that's a little bit of a head scratcher for me. I don't know about you.
Listen, I mean, I'm not going to come out here and say that I wasn't one of those people holding an Ozzy Diaz ticket when Joe Pyfer knocked him out. I was not on Pyfer. I thought he was going to lose that fight. I liked Ozzy Diaz. I thought he showed some promise in LFA and, was certainly UFC ready. And then Pyfer comes out and lays him out. And not just that, right? You see like the Dana White, kind of soundbite of being
Joe
be
Pyfer.
like, He's got a lot of eyes on him. I think it's why it's on the main card. I mean, when's the last time you saw a contender guy debut on the main card of any card, even if it's a fight night, right? So Amedovski, he's got some power in his hands, but besides that, I mean, I don't really see how he can win here. Certainly not in the grappling. But if he can land a shot on Pyfer, I mean, he can put this away. I think you're right at like a minus 420. I don't know how you bet Pyfer here. Maybe you take him inside the distance, but clear setup fight. And Amedovski, he's 3 fights, 3 losses in a row. So the guy is coming in hungry. He knows he needs a win. Dangerous guy. I always kind of hesitate to bet against guys like that. As shitty as he is, there's anything can happen in the UFC. So right now it's a no bet for me, but I'll probably have some sort of take on the spaces later this week.
Yeah, I just feel like there's absolutely no way you can attack this because even looking at props, right? I mean, Pyfer's minus 165 to win by knockout, minus 250 to win inside the distance. Even if you want to bet the over-under, it's at 1.5 rounds. The under's minus 185. And, not for nothing in his contender series fight, Pyfer, he was pretty much a slow starter, right? He didn't necessarily get started until that second round late when he started to pour it on, and that's when he eventually got the finish. And, you mentioned it. Amedovski's on that 3-fight skid. Sometimes you see them take a more conservative approach coming into this fight, right? So you can't even bet that over under. For what it's worth, though, Amedovski looked horrible his last time out. Like very bad, very slow. No
and look
head
where he
movement.
lost to. Look who he lost to. I mean, Joseph Holmes.
Mean Joe. I mean, Ugly Joe, right? So it wasn't a pretty fight for him. Looking back, that obviously explains the line here, but he does have power. I mean, I think I bet Amedovski in his last fight, so it's kind of has a bad taste in my mouth here. But I can't get any sort of angle on this fight. Definitely a steer clear.
Yeah, it's it seems like favored. I just don't know how you lay any cash on Amedovski. He's 0-3. His last 3 in the UFC. Clearly seems like he's on his way out. So enough said.
Yeah, absolutely. I think enough of that fight. Let's move on to this next one. I'm interested to hear your take on this one because this is a fight I've been seeing, pop up all around Twitter for the most part all week. Seems like everyone's on one side here, but I think I disagree. We got Andre Touchy Feely minus 125 against Bill Algio plus 105. I'm going to let you start this one off because I want to see if you agree with me.
Yeah, Andre Touchy Feely, one of the, top 5 favorite nicknames in MMA.
It's a great one.
Those
tattoos, though, I don't know.
Fun fact, I was sitting behind him for the first Rob Whittaker, Yoel Romero fight in Vegas. Funny guy, was cracking jokes all night. Bill Algio, coming off a utter destruction of Herbert Burns. Herbert basically kind of quit in there after he didn't get that submission in the first, minute, which is typical for Herbert Burns. I mean, we've seen him do that time and time again. But, holds a win over, Janison Brito, which seems to be aging well for this fight. And, Algio, you can count on him to come and bring the fight. He's going to be in there all 3 rounds unless you get him out of there. Seems to get stronger as the fight goes. And I think a guy like Feely, who's seems to be like back up against the wall, man. I mean, he has 1 win in his last 5. His last fight by knockout, I was holding an Andre Feely ticket, and that caught me by surprise. So I'm actually kind of torn here. I don't have a play as we sit here today, but I lean actually the Algio side, just because I think the cardio and the volume there can, play a role. And, it seems like Algio is coming in with all the momentum. So, we'll see. I'm always interested to see how guys come back after getting knocked out. And, again, you don't want to play the MMA math game, but Algio does have, a win over Brito. So, we'll see. It's not a strong take, but I lean Algio here.
Yeah, I think this fight is lined correctly. I mean, minus 125 one side. I mean, you can make the argument either way. One could be the minus 125 here. I thought you had Brito in that last fight. I guess it was Kevin. I remember I was holding Brito by knockout in that fight. So it was wonderful for me. But this fight, it's such a different matchup, right? I mean, Algio doesn't necessarily have like one punch knockout power. Like you said, he's just durable and he's going to weather the storm until it's his turn, right? And then he's going to cook you up. And I think Feely, he has some glaring advantages in this fight. I think predominantly would be his wrestling, right? I feel like he could take this fight to the mat and he could keep it there. I mean, we saw it in the Herbert Burns fight with Algio alone. He took him down. And if you were holding a Herbert Burns ticket there, you thought you were in great shape for the first like 2.5 minutes of that fight. I was there live for that fight, and I completely forgot what the first half of that first round looked like until I rewatched it. And, he was in a compromised position there. I mean, Herbert Burns pretty easily got the takedown too early on. Obviously, he wound up tearing his ACL that he just got surgery on, which, explains why he wasn't able to get back up off the mat once Algio started laying it on him. But, Feely, I think you mentioned it. He's kind of got his back against the wall here. The one thing that kind of stood out in his last fight was just how hittable he was, especially down the pipe. I mean, jabs were snapping his head back. And, Algio, I feel like you mentioned it here. I mean, if he could weather the first round or two, I think come that third round, he could be a little bit of trouble. But I think Feely has enough of what it takes here. He works behind the jab pretty well. He has the takedowns. I feel like Algio pretty much just has that one method like we just mentioned. But Feely, on the other hand, I feel like, he could kind of take this fight different places that are going to be comfortable for him as well. And for that reason, I favor the favorite here at minus 125. And yeah, I don't know how much exposure I'll have to this fight because it is close, like I mentioned, but definitely going to be a decent fight here. I think it's going to be a good scrap.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting pointing out that the last two times that Algio has been an underdog under plus 200, he's cashed, right? Where he hasn't cashed is where he's been on that sort of that bigger underdog spot. So I actually love this spot for Algio. I really think it's a dog or pass. So, if the line kind of shifts and we see Algio as the favorite here, I may lean Feely. But yeah, I think whereas Feely has the power here in the moments, I think the volume is going to be on the Algio side, and we can see like a sweaty split decision here potentially, or we can see Feely maybe fading late. I really think Algio he's a game opponent, and it's a great matchup. Both these guys are, matched up perfectly, truth be told. So let's ride. I mean, I like that we're on opposite sides here.
Yeah, and that was our first truth be told of the episode there, so I'm happy we were able to get it out there. But this next right here, the co-main event, this is a fucking banger. To put it lightly, you got Chidi Njokuani going against Gregory Rodriguez. I mean, Rodriguez coming off that last fight, right, against Julian Marquez, he just put it on him, and that was only a 1-round fight. I had a Julian Marquez ticket there at like plus 175. Coming into the fight, I was so confident in that side. Probably within the first exchange, I could have thrown my ticket out. I was like, Gregory Rodriguez, he just hits so much harder than anyone else, right? And he's going against someone in Chidi Njokuani who his entire, profile and character right now in the UFC is that he puts people's lights out. So you have power versus power. But I believe that Rodriguez holds the edge in Njokuani's only strength, if that makes sense. I mean, I just mentioned Njokuani's power is his whole game. I think Rodriguez hits harder. On top of that, Rodriguez has the ability, I know he doesn't show it ever, but he has the ability to get this fight to the ground and submit you. I mean, we saw a flash of that in the Marquez fight, right? When he jumped on his back, he was on the backpack, and then he eventually found his way sliding off and then knocked him out. But in that one little exchange there, we just saw how slick Rodriguez could be if he's willing to get it down. And then Njokuani, his last time out against Dusko Todorovic, Dusko was able to take him down and hold him there for a little bit. So I think if you're in the Rodriguez camp, you kind of have to, if he doesn't have yes men around him, you kind of have to look at that and be like, hey, Gregory, I know you love knocking these people out, but maybe you should try taking this fight to the mat and get a submission here. I know, it's such a glaring advantage for him in this spot. And I think when it comes to Njokuani, the people that he's going to have trouble against are the people that could bring it to the mat and the people that could strike too. My one hesitation with Rodriguez is lack of head movement. I mean, this guy's head is always on the center line. He doesn't move it at all. And it's all because he relies on his power to, basically beat your power, right? And we saw him get knocked out by Jordan Williams on the Contender Series a few years ago, which is like the one thing that's sticking out in the back of my head here, which is like you cannot max bet this guy because there's a good chance he gets knocked out, right? I mean, we've seen him get hurt before in the UFC. We've seen him gas out before in the UFC. And, I think that those are reasons why you have to be hesitant backing this line here. I mean, he's plus 100 as it stands. But Chitty, I don't think he has the greatest gas tank as well. I mean, we see him fade towards the end of the first round sometimes, and I don't feel like that's going to be a huge advantage here. So I kind of could cancel out that bad take for Rodriguez. But Chitty, I feel like he could easily find the mark on Rodriguez here. Rodriguez, before his last fight, too, I don't know if you remember the fight prior to that was the fight that went to split decision. He wound up losing. I'm drawing a blank on the fighter's name who he went against, but he was also a Contender Series alum. And, a lot of people thought that Rodriguez won that fight. He wound up losing by split. And then coming into his last fight against Julian Marquez, he was like, I am not leaving this into the hands of the judges. I've learned the hard way. If I want to get this done, I'm going to do it myself. And for that reason, I think that there's value on under 1.5 here at plus money. I mean, these guys bang. I mean, Njokuani hasn't left the first round yet of a UFC fight. Rodriguez coming off a first round domination his last time out. And, if these guys gassed out, it's going to happen in the first round. So like halfway through in the first half of that second round, one of them could just land a few and the other guy could just, find their way out of there. So I think if you're playing this one at under 1.5 at plus 110, it's going to be an exciting fight. There are going to be moments, even if you lose, but there's going to be moments where you think that you've won the bet. So I feel like that's the better play in this fight, especially if you're looking at this from, out of 10 times, how many times does this time go under versus out of 10 times, how many times does Rodriguez win the fight at plus 100? I feel like the value is going to be on that underside instead.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good take. It definitely both guys here are coming to finish. It certainly doesn't seem like the kind of fight that would go 3 rounds. One can make the argument that those are the kind of fights that go 3 rounds, right? So who knows? I like, but I like the points you made on both guys. When I was looking at how to cap this one, I lean the Rodriguez side just because of the more path to victory, and the fact that we've seen Njokuani get submitted before, specifically the rear naked choke. So I think a lot of people have seen his last few fights and they've been so quick. I mean, he seems like this world beater. I also kind of think that we've been subconsciously getting fed Chidi Njokuani all week, right? I mean, you had Mario Souza fight on the Contender Series on Tuesday. He got knocked out by Njokuani on the Contender Series, and then obviously the common opponents that both guys have. Dusko Todorovic, yes, he took down Njokuani, but I'm not very high on him and his ability to control his opponents at all. I think compared to Rodriguez in the grappling department, Rodriguez is, head and shoulders above him, specifically around his submission skills. And I think looking at the line here, you can get Rodriguez by submission at plus 500 on BetOnline.
Wow, no way, really?
That's right. And
that's
I think
the number
it's
right there.
It's Rodriguez has been this guy that seemed to have fallen in love with his striking, but I don't, these guys are similar size from a height perspective, but, Chidi has, I think, like a 4-inch reach advantage. Rodriguez lost against Jordan Williams. You mentioned that, but Williams is the kind of guy that just kind of bull rushes you with like 3-4 punches at a time. And, if one lands, he holds good power, but Njokuani is more of a sniper, man. He throws down the pipe, get 1-2, obviously uses all of his limbs, but I think not the same kind of blitzing style that got Rodriguez caught against Williams. So for that reason, I'm going to be on the Rodriguez side, and I'm definitely going to be taking some Rodriguez by submission. It's screaming out at me as an inefficient line. We've been seeing so much of Rodriguez's striking that everyone's saying that he's not going to, he never uses his jiu-jitsu, so on and so forth. I think this is the fight he uses his jiu-jitsu.
It would
he
make
gets him
sense,
down,
right?
and yeah.
It would make total sense, and it almost feels like just based off past matchups that the UFC is trying to like build up Rodriguez a little bit. I don't know if you get that same vibe as I do. I mean, Julian Marquez, he obviously does a lot outside the octagon. They gave him that fight. They gave him the fight against what's his name, Petrosian. That's the one I was talking about before, off the Contender Series too.
That's why they're pushing Njokuani this week. They're pushing.
That's what I feel. And
Njokuani
has those 2 highlight knockouts in his first 2 fights, but he obviously has a clear deficiency in his game, which is the ground game, right? So it almost feels like, Rodriguez, because I mean, when you watch Rodriguez fight, there's few people more entertaining, right? I mean, as we mentioned, he could just wrestle you, take you to the mat, and control you there for 15 minutes and win that way. But he chooses to go out there toe to toe, swing until one of you guys fall. And I actually really like that number, plus 500 on the submission. I know DraftKings has plus 450. Which even so, that's a good number too. I mean, I think knockouts plus 250. And then when you're analyzing how Njokuani loses, right? I feel like that's one of the biggest ways to predict a fight, especially if you're on a side and you want to predict how they win. The most important thing is how does the other guy lose, right? And when you're looking at knockout numbers, he's got knocked out 3 times, he's got submitted 3 times, but he's got 14 knockouts of his own, only 1 submission of his own. So it kind of paints a picture, how lost he is on the ground. And, we both touched on this already, that Rodriguez is a highly credentialed grappler, right? I know UFC fans, casuals may not know that because of his fight style, but he could get this down. He could snatch a neck like that. And I touched on this earlier, right, about the Marquez fight. How quickly he was able to transition to that backpack and get on Marquez was highly impressive. And Marquez is a good grappler, right? So it kind of paints a picture here, and I'm with you. Plus 500 submission. I don't even have to take a money line, right? I'll just take that and I'll be happy.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great spot, and it's being overlooked. It's what Yanni the Greek would call an inefficient line.
Where's the regression at, though?
We'll see the regression on the Njokuani side. That's for sure. He's not going to keep knocking people out in the first minute. It's impossible. I mean,
I want Yanni to come out and be like, "Hey, I'm on Chitty this week by knockout," and I'll be washing my hands. I'll be like, "All right, we're good to go." But
yeah, I mean, side note, if you were in the Discord on Tuesday, you all saw we had a clean sweep on the reverse sweep on the Yanni parlay, but threw out a couple nice Contender Series bets.
Yeah, I mean, you're being a little humble there. You say we, but it was all you. I mean, you had the parlay you hit. You actually had the 2 parlays you hit, right?
Facts.
Yeah, so I mean, you had yourself a great Contender Series night. I know it's been a tough season for everybody, especially Yanni the Greek, and just fade him moving forward. And no disrespect to him, it's just it's a crazy trend going on right now. But enough about Yanni, enough about this fight. It's time to move on to the main event of the evening. One of my favorite fighters, honestly, Corey Sandhagen taking on Song Yadong. Song Yadong is coming off a huge knockout win versus Marlon Moraes in the first round. He's coming off a knockout win over Julio Arce as well. He's coming off a split decision win over Casey Kenny. Excuse me. Corey Sandhagen coming off back-to-back losses, right? It's one of the first times he's found himself in this predicament. Basically got robbed against TJ Dillashaw. I had a Dillashaw ticket there, so I was very happy with the decision, but I have to agree. I mean, I thought Sandhagen won that fight, especially if you're judging off like the new criteria that we see being pushed forward now when it's all about damage, right? And just look at what fucking Sandhagen did to Dillashaw there. And then his next time out, the last time we saw him was basically a short notice fight for an interim belt against Petr Yan, one of the best fighters, probably the best striker in the division, right? So to think that Song Yadong comes to this one and outstrikes Corey Sandhagen, I think that's kind of far-fetched. I understand that he has a lot of hype behind him. He's a young guy. He's coming off, some really good wins, but, not for nothing. He lost to Kyler Phillips, and I feel like Kyler Phillips is like a poor version of Corey Sandhagen, right? I mean, obviously on the ground, Kyler Phillips has the advantage there, but Corey Sandhagen, he's not a slouch on the ground. I feel like if anything is going, wrong on the feet, he has the threat to take Song down, I think. But I don't really think that's going to be necessary. The only guy that was able to outstrike Sandhagen thus far was Petr Yan. And, I think, like I just said, Song, that's a big reach to ask for him to outstrike Corey Sandhagen. And we've never seen Sandhagen in this position back against the wall. You mentioned that you like fighters in that position. I like Corey here a ton. I love him as a fighter. I like him as a person too outside the octagon. I feel like this is a very good spot for him. They're putting him back in a main event. It's almost like a thank you for taking that Jan fight on short notice. Here's a main event, in a winnable fight. I think he's the minus 200 favorite as it stands. So I think, just everything is, I like the spot for Sandhagen. I don't have to go into breakdowns of styles and whatnot, but spot alone, I like him a lot at minus 200, at minus 195.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard not to like Sandhagen here. Song is good. He packs good power, sets up his punches. Really, power in all of his limbs, right? I mean, he's been. We've seen the progression with him. He came into the UFC pretty raw. Working with Team Alpha Male, and I think it's one of those spots where the UFC is finally giving him his first main event, and is this his first main event actually? The fight against Marlon Moraes was that a main event?
Oh, you're talking about Song?
I'm talking about Song, yeah.
This should be his first main event, I believe. I think the Moraes fight was like a co-main or something.
It was a co-main. You're right. Yeah. So first main event. I mean, I think the guy has great potential, but Sandhagen is going to be presenting problems that he's never really faced. I mean, the height and the reach advantage. It's gonna be tough for Song to close the distance, I think. Sandhagen is an intelligent fighter. We saw him get caught by Jan in that fight, but Peter Yan is one of the best strikers probably the best striker in the division, right?
He's one of the best strikers in the UFC.
Yeah, pound for pound. So he went all 5 rounds. He recovered after that. I think it's a tough matchup. I think Song still has a lot of growing to do. I see him losing here, maybe a decision, maybe he gets knocked out, but he'll be back. That's for sure. I mean, he's only 24 years old. This guy has a bright future. I think they're rushing him a little bit, putting up against a monster like Sandhagen. I think Sandhagen is like in his prime right now. If he wins this, he's right back into the title picture. Algio and Dillashaw fight soon, so he'll probably fight the winner, or fight the winner of Jan and O'Malley. But I like Sandhagen here as a pretty. I think the line is spot on, right? I think he's one. He knows kind of the what this is. He's going up against a young up and comer, and he needs to kind of big brother him a little bit. So I think Corey can keep him at distance, land his shots when he wants, come in and out. He has to be careful of Song, when he comes in, right? Because one of those looping hooks catches the chin. I mean, Song has the power to flatline him for sure.
Yeah.
But Sandhagen is definitely the side. Again, he needs a win. He's lost 2 in a row against the top, the top of the top. So he needs to reaffirm his space in this division. I think that's really what this comes down to.
I'll tell you, boy, has that win over Cheeto Vera aged well for Song Yadong, right? I mean, look at where Cheeto is now in that division. I think Song, if he does happen to win this fight, he puts himself he propels himself up towards that top 5, I think. And, he could find himself fighting, anyone in that top 5, maybe even a rematch with Cheeto Vera. We never know. But you actually mentioned the Jan versus O'Malley fight. How fun would Sandhagen versus O'Malley be as a 5-rounder?
Yeah. I think that'd be super interesting. I mean, listen, I'm going to throw something out here, but I think Sandhagen by submission is actually completely viable here. Song actually just lost by rear naked choke in a grappling match. So
didn't he lose to like a blue belt too? Did I see that?
Yeah, I mean, it's guys of Sandhagen's size. I could totally see him grabbing the back and cinching on a choke. It's one of these interesting kind of scenarios that you never think is going to happen, but I definitely think it's live. I'm actually trying to find the Sandhagen by submission plus 900. I don't hate that,
No, not at all. I mean, I feel like Sandhagen's going to be eyeing a finish here too. I mean, obviously coming off back-to-back losses, the win means most to him. But, I mean, look at the one loss against TJ. Judges' scorecards. A fight shouldn't have been left up to the judges' decision there. Wound up costing him. Obviously lost by decision in the next fight, but that was the right decision there. I think one thing that might give Song some problems here is the unorthodox style of Corey Sandhagen, right? I mean, someone technical like Song Yadong, they're looking for you to do X so they could come back with Y, right? It's almost like how he's programmed to strike. He's looking for, these kind of conventional punches to set up his own, and you're just not going to get those looks against someone like Corey Sandhagen. I mean, Sandhagen's coming from all different angles. He's throwing weird strikes at you, and with that long frame too, he has the ability to, mix it up. And I just feel like matchup-wise is just a really this could age like spoiled milk, but I feel like it's just a really bad matchup for Song Yadong here.
It is. And, Sandhagen is, if you're a conspiracy theory believer, he's one of these guys that, he's appeared on the Joe Rogan podcast. Historically, those guys have had a lot of success. It seems like this is a great setup fight for him because everybody knows how tough Song is. And, like you mentioned, unorthodox and very critical of himself, very real with himself. I love when he speaks because so yeah, it's great to see that we're both on that side. I mean, I don't have anything official, but definitely a multi-unit bet on Sandhagen money line.
Yeah, this could be one of those situations. I might throw in one of my coveted cross-sport parlays with college football, and then
that don't count.
It doesn't count, and then Sandhagen money line there, just nice little two-legger. Get the price on Sandhagen down a little bit. It's currently minus 190. I'm totally fine playing that line straight up at minus 190. I'd even put like 3.8 units on it to win 2. I feel like, we touched on everything there. We're on the same side on a few of these, right? So hopefully that leads itself to some more success just like last week. And for any of you guys who tuned in, thank you guys for the support. Make sure you guys hop into the Discord. You are missing out if you are not in there. Not only are we throwing out live bets, Dan, like he mentioned, he threw out Nate Diaz by submission, and Nate Diaz 4th round. But I think the best part above any of that is just celebrating the wins together, right? I mean, when we're all in there, after something crazy happens and you just get the flood of notifications coming through, everyone's cashing out together. That is my favorite part of it, hands down. But make sure you join. You're really doing yourself a disservice by not being in there.
Yeah, no doubt. And obviously, we've got the spaces every Saturday at 11 a.m. Eastern. So a little bit early for the the West Coast folks, but it's worth it. And we've been getting more and more folks in there with some interesting breakdowns. And everyone who joins is welcome to come up and kind of chat through their take. And we all learn from everybody, so it's interesting to celebrate the wins. And it's always interesting to see everybody's opinions on how fights end. Remember, like that liver kick last week from Aldana, is it fixed or not? I mean, who knows? But it was certainly good for me. But
those are always fun, especially the way we broke that one down in the spaces too. I know you were going back and forth with Wes Belfort a little bit there. You got the last laugh. I'm sure he got a few laughs on you though throughout the card as well. He's been joining lately, so that's always been nice having his viewpoint. He's pretty knowledgeable when it comes to the sport, and Max as well. They've both done great jobs. Joining the spaces, helping us out there, giving their takes. It's always very very respectful discourse going on in there. It's not braggadocious by any means. It's always just you may have missed this point. You may not be highlighting this point enough. So it's very refreshing. From a informational standpoint.
Yeah, and you're never as good as your best win. You're never as bad as your worst loss, right?
You're only as good as your last one.
Yeah. There you go. Right. Yeah. That's the silver lining. So hopefully we let the good times roll, and obviously we're going to be posting the King's Purse. I know we've only got a couple. We're going to wait till Kevin comes back so we can kind of finalize a few things, but. Besides that, we'll post those in Nights of DGen Discord, Saturday before the fights. So grab a night, grab a steed, join the Discord, follow, myself, Proto, and certainly Kev on Twitter, Fight Night. And besides that, guys, love doing this with you folks every week, and keep the money coming in, baby.
Absolutely. And also follow Fight Night on TikTok. We're on TikTok. Our boy Metaverse King does great cut-ups there. And he tries to keep it live. But thank you guys again for joining in, and we'll see you guys Saturday.
Okay.